On behalf of Daphne and Ian, Andrew, Bruce, and Billy, the entire MacLachlan clan, it's my sacred privilege to welcome you this afternoon and to thank you for your expressions of compassion, sympathy at the loss of this amazing husband and father and grandfather and brother, uncle, and friend. Our purpose here today is twofold. First, of course, we've come to grieve and mourn together because the loss of someone that we love leaves a shared pain in all of our hearts. Secondly, and equally as important, we're here to pay honor and tribute to Bill, to celebrate his life. It was a life that was well lived and deserving of our honor and respect. As we spend some time together today, you're going to hear some stories from several people that may give you some reminders of your own time and your own memories together with him. And we're going to make some time. If you'd like to share some a little later on, we'll allow you to do that as well. But whether you choose to share today or not, I encourage you to continue to speak his name and share his story, keeping his memory and legacy alive for generations to come. Will you pray with me as we begin? God, this is a hard time. Our emotions go everywhere at the time of loss. Our relationships, they strain, they come together. They're as mixed up as our emotions sometimes. And God, right now, I just pray that you'd be the God of comfort and healing for this entire family. That as they are walking through this territory, that they'll know that you are walking with them. You haven't abandoned them. This is part of where you take us. So hold them close. Let them know your comfort and peace. Again, my prayer comes to you in the name of Jesus. Amen. As I said at the outset, part of our purpose is to come together to grieve the loss of Bill. As we do that, it matters that we at least try to understand what grief is. We can say the name and we talk about grief, but unless we truly understand it, I don't think it has the same impact and importance. And as strange as it may sound, there's a direct relationship between grief and love. The more or stronger our love for someone, the deeper and greater our grief is when we lose them. Some people say that grief is like the shadow of love, and others say that it's an expression of love itself. It's confusion, not caused by not knowing how we can love somebody who's gone. It's also love's unwillingness to give up. And it's a reminder to us that we need to stretch our bonds and redefine the limits of expressing so that we can create that space where we do and can love someone even in their absence. As we grieve the loss of someone we love, it's natural that we seek to find comfort and to give comfort. Just as people grieve differently, people find comfort from different sources. Some turn to music for comfort. Now, Bill loved to go out into the barn and listen to his music loud because his hearing, was going. So while he was piddling around out there, one of his favorite expressions, it was Patsy Cline, cranked up loud, other music from the 60s, other groups that he loved to listen to, or some of the tunes from Scotland, his native land. Some people turn to food. Again, for Bill, that's meat and potatoes. Now, not steak, the ground meat, shaped ground meat, the good stuff. And he loved meat, potatoes, gravy on everything, right? Soups and stews. And his favorite, besides anything that Daphne cooked, his very favorite was drinking the water from the boiled cabbage, right? That was his thing. And you're all going, you? But you guys know, whenever the cabbage was boiling, he knew he had a drink ready for him. He loved some of the foods he grew up with, and Daphne cooked them well. The fish and chips, the bangers and mash, all of those things. Food was a comfort to him. Other people, though, turn not just to food and to music. Other people turn to reading or writing or journaling or something like that, or even reading other people's journals and writings about grief. And a lot of people, regardless of their spiritual belief, turn to the Bible to find words of comfort. See, the Bible's not just a story of a people group. It's filled with poetry and songs and wisdom and lots of words of comfort. In the Old Testament, there's a man named David. He wrote a lot of songs. He was a shepherd. Eventually, he became a king, but he was just an incredible songwriter. He wrote some of these words: "May your unfailing love be my comfort, according to your promise to your servant." So what he's recognizing is God's love for us is a source of comfort. Even when we don't feel it, we can know that it's there. He says, "My comfort in my suffering is this: your promise preserves my life." The promises of God. Again, when we hear promises or when we make promises, people expect us to keep them. And David knew and understood God's promise and his promise specifically for him. And we can claim those promises too. Probably one of the most common psalms that we know of David is the 23rd Psalm. It says this: "The Lord is my shepherd, so I lack nothing." Now, here in the States, the shepherd doesn't mean anything, but I would venture to say that back in England and in Scotland, they knew what shepherds were back in the day, and especially out in the outback areas. "The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures and leads me beside the quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. And even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I'll fear no evil, for you're with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, and my cup overflows. Surely your goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life, and I'll dwell in the house of the Lord forever." Again, a promise of God's presence and love in our lifetime and in eternity, that he's there. And we can take comfort in that. We can take comfort in those words, in the thoughts, and in the picture that they paint. When I was a kid, there was a lot of that I didn't understand. And this thing about the valley of the shadow of death, I had no idea what that was. There's some theologians believe that's a real place. Between Jerusalem and Jericho, it's a mountain road. Jericho's up high, Jerusalem's down low. And the mountain road is like a winding mountain road. And Bill would appreciate this because it's like in the Westerns. He liked to watch Westerns on TV, the old Westerns. But in the Westerns, when the stagecoach was coming through that winding mountain road and the music got bad, you know that the bad guys were going to be there to rob the stagecoach. That's the valley of the shadow of death. The same thing on that road from Jericho to Jerusalem. So when David's writing about that, he's writing about a real place that it gave people a feeling they understood. He said, even though I'm going through there, and whether I'm going through it figuratively or really, I know I don't have to be afraid of evil. Why? God himself is with me. Paul was an apostle, one of the earliest followers of Jesus, and he wrote a lot of letters to the early churches, encouragement, instruction, and comfort. It's just two excerpts from one of the letters he wrote to the church in Corinth. First one says, "Praise be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus, the Father of compassion, the God of all comfort, who comforts us in all of our troubles, so we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves receive from God." I love that. And I didn't understand that again as a kid. But as I began to dig into that and tear it apart, you know what I've come to understand? It doesn't matter if we get our comfort from food or from music or from shopping or from reading or where we think we get it. It originates with God. And he plants that comfort there for us. And it's not just for us, but it's for us to share. That's why we're here, to share the comfort with one another. And I think that's so significant. You're going to come across somebody else who's lost their dad, who's lost their grandpa. And you're going to be able to put your arm around their shoulders and say, "I lost my grandpa too. This is where I found comfort. I lost my dad too. I just want to come alongside you and share in your grief." That's what this is all about. The other thing that Paul wrote, he says, we know that if this earthly tent we live in is destroyed, we have a building from God, an eternal house in heaven, not built by human hands. Now, this would have resonated with Bill because he built his own house. He understands what it takes to build a house. He built the house and put it together, and they lived in it for a lot of years, but even that is a temporary dwelling. And so what Paul's saying is when our earthly tent, he's talking about our bodies fail. When our bodies fail, it doesn't matter. We've got an eternal body waiting for us there. I think the scriptures are clear, and I believe them. I believe that we can be comforted even in the midst of our grief and our pain. We can celebrate with Bill because God himself has the power over death, and he made the way for him to have victory over death as well. Bill's obituary says this: William Scotty Beresford MacLachlan, 89, of Anderson, passed away October 24th, 2021 at the Golden Living Center in Muncie. He was born August 15th, 1932 in Glasgow, Scotland, the son of James and Ellen Mary Beresford MacLachlan. Bill proudly served in the British Royal Navy in the United Kingdom from 1953 to 1955. He's a retired electrician for Guide Lamp Division of General Motors. He was a member of UAW 663. He's survived by his loving wife, whom he married October the 9th, 1958, Daphne Cleworth MacLachlan. Sons, Ian and Janet MacLachlan, Andrew MacLachlan, Bruce and Yvonne MacLachlan, William MacLachlan. Grandchildren, Anthony, Elizabeth, Holly Clem, Mitchell, Alexis, Rowan, and Elowen MacLachlan. Several great-grandchildren and several extended family members. He was preceded to death by his parents, his sister Rena Cadell, and a brother, James MacLachlan. The rest of the obituary talks about the services and a burial of his cremains at some later day, except for this line at the end, which is very important. It says memorial contributions may be made to the Alzheimer's Association. Like most obituaries, Bill's really doesn't tell us a whole lot about him. And they're not designed to do that. They just give it a little information, and his does as well, his birth and his dates of death. A little bit of information about his family and his job, but it doesn't tell us about him. I'll confess to you right up front, I didn't know Bill. I never met him. But I was able to spend some time yesterday with Daphne and Bill and Andrew and learn just a little bit about him that really begins to give me a better picture of who he was. And if I'd ever known him, I know I would have liked him. I know I would have. That's just the kind of person he was. To really understand what makes Bill tick, we have to go back to his childhood in Scotland, growing up in wartime. Air raids, bombardment, scarcity, some of the hallmarks of his childhood. Even though he was born after the Great Depression, which was a worldwide phenomenon, not just here in the United States, growing up in its wake and in a war zone forced him to learn to be frugal and responsible at a very early age. As a preteen, he had become the man of the house as his father was off to war. He took very seriously the roles of protector and provider, even at a young age. His work ethic formed early, stayed with him his entire life, and is now passed on to his children and being passed to the grandchildren. When the war ended and he was becoming an adult, he entered into the trades to become an electrician. At that time, the country was trying to rebuild. He was trying to build himself as a person and continuing to grow and to learn and to serve people, and that never stopped. His heart to serve never stopped. His desire to learn and grow never stopped. He earned his full electrician papers, what we would call his journeyman rating, at the age of 21. At that time, the United Kingdom had a mandatory call-up for military service. Bill opted to join the Royal Navy, where he served with distinction aboard an aircraft carrier. Although the carrier avoided combat, they were steaming toward Korea when the end of hostilities was declared. He served for 2 years with the Navy, and after he came out, he returned to his trade. So imagine, by the time he's 23 years old, he had lived through World War II, up close and personal, not from a distance, right in his hometown. He had been responsible to be the man of the house as a preteen and a teenager. He had earned his journeyman certificate as an electrician and served time in the Navy, narrowly avoiding being involved in combat in a second war. This is what we have to understand as we come to appreciate the man, the character of the man. Some of us know as Scotty, as Bill, his dad, granddad. He and Daphne share a fairy tale story of a life. It's amazing. It was Fortnite Festival. Now, when I say Fortnite, a lot of the kids are going to say, Fortnite? How cool is that? It's a game. Okay? My grandkids know what that is. I have no idea, but they get all excited when they hear Fortnite. So the Fortnite Festival is going on. It's like the summer shutdown that we would experience at GM or a major factory here. And Bill and John, his friend, decided that they were going to go down to the island of Jersey and spend Fortnite there at Jersey. And John had a date with a girl named Dory. Well, Dory had this pesky little sister that John and Dory kind of wanted to get rid of. And so they said, Bill, would you just like be her date for tonight? And so he did. He did. And so they went on this date, and after the date was over, blind date, neither one of them had seen each other or met each other. After the date was over, he went back to Scotland, and Daphne wouldn't give up. She kept writing him, and he kept writing back, and writing back. And a little while later, on Hogmanay, Dory and Daphne went to Glasgow to celebrate. Now, Hogmanay, anybody here besides me that didn't know what that was until yesterday? Okay, you all know. Oh, thank you for your confession back there. You and me, we're together. It's a New Year's celebration. It's a big deal. Scottish New Year. It's a big celebration and a big party and a big deal. So they went up to celebrate Hogmanay. And at that time, during that time, they decided, or I guess Bill decided, you're going to get married. And I don't know if you had a choice or not, but he proposed, and you accepted that. And just a few months later, in October of 1958, they got married in a double wedding ceremony with John and Dory. What a fairy tale story. I love that. 2 years later, they made the decision to move to the United States. Work was scarce on Jersey, and it's not New Jersey, it's the real one, right? The Channel Islands, and your story growing up has to be just as amazing as Bill's, because of where Jersey is, just off the coast of France. During World War II, that I can't imagine what that was like. So they lived there for a couple of years, and they decided that they'd give the U.S. a try for 2 or 3 years, see if they could make it work. So they came to Chesterfield. Of all the places in the United States of America, they ended up in Chesterfield. They had some family nearby, and so that's what anchored them here. What they found is that work here was just as scarce as it was in Jersey. And so it was miserable. They didn't have close friends other than family. Everything was strange. These Americans talked funny. It was just a different culture and a different everything. But they didn't have enough money to go back. And he couldn't get a job. Bill finally landed a job at Ball Brothers in Muncie. Worked there just over a year, and then that facility closed. They offered him a job in Chicago, but because he loved his wife so much, he said no. He knew that moving her away from the family and friends that she had established would just be too much. He loved you. I want you to know that I know that. I could see it, and I told Bill that today. Bill and Billy, right? Little William. They said they call you Little William. Is that right? No, not allowed to. I could tell by the way you look and talk that you know that you were loved. And I know that you loved him. And he would have given anything for you. And he did. He did. So he turned that position down, and then he got a job at Brockway Glass for a few weeks. While he was working at Brockway, there was a knock on the door from a HR person from Guide Lamp, who had pulled his resume out of a stack of resumes and said, hey, If he's still looking for a job and he passes the physical, we want to hire him. Have him give a call. So he gave a call, and they wanted him to come to work the next Monday. But because of his integrity, he went back to Brockway and said, I need to give you a 2-week notice. And he told the guy from GM, he said, I can't be there Monday because I have to give this notice. That's integrity. And so he went to work there in 1963 and stayed there till 1996 as an electrician, as a union rep, as the chairman of the skilled trades. He made so many friends and made an impression on so many people and affected so many people's lives. A lot of the time he worked third shift so that he could spend time with the boys during the day. He wanted to be there for football and baseball and swim. Now this is American football, but also for soccer. And he wanted to be there. He was proud, so proud of the boys. The boys are proud of him. I know that. So I want to invite them now to share some memories and stories with you. And I think Bill's going to start it off.
Hello, everyone. So I started out, I've written a ton of things to say today. And they went pretty well. They're really good. Every time I write it, no problem. I say it in my head, no problem. But once I spoke it out loud, I was a bumbling mess. I couldn't get through it. So we're gonna wing it, and this could be ugly. Hopefully, I'll be entertaining. First off, thank you all for coming today. It's meant so much to us all. I'm blessed. I have some amazing friends, incredible family, all of you. My brothers are ideal. They're wonderful. My mom's an angel. She's a saint. And then my dad. My dad, I don't think there's words. I really don't. See, he was a provider. He was a gentleman. He was a role model. He was a rock. He was all these things when I was a young man, a young child growing up. I didn't see him. I didn't see him as much as I could have. With him always working third shift, and when I say always working third shift, I mean he always worked. It was 7 days a week most of the time. It was he'd go in at 10 o'clock and he'd work over just about every day. And I remember going upstairs and waking him up to go to work every night. But he was always there. He was that presence that loomed over the household, and he was that rock, and he was that inspiration, and he was my dad. He was my father. I respected him. He was head of the house, and I was proud of him. As I become older, as I guess growing up, my relationship with Dad has shifted. He's still that rock. He's still that father figure, that person who I admire and I cherish and I love. But he's become a friend. He's someone I can share just normal conversations with, someone I can BS with, someone I can be myself to, someone I can relate to. And that was special. That was, it was a weird change, but it was a great change. And then as time continued to go on, and with his wicked disease that he had, I was lucky to be there by his side through so much of it. And he changed again. He, sorry, I told you it's going to be a mess. He's still my buddy, he's still my friend, but I'd see him become younger, childlike, needed taken care of, needed that guidance, that structure. I remember when the short time he was staying with me, he was going, I'm going to go to the police station and get a job. He was dead set on getting a job his entire life, no matter how bad he got. That's how much of a worker and how much of a man this gentleman was. I'm going to go to the station. No, Dad, you can't walk downtown by yourself. You can, a mile and a half, 2 miles, you can barely walk. No, I'm going to do this. And I remember having to, or he'd be in the car and refuse to get out of the car when they get home. And I remember physically grabbing him, picking him up, and having to carry him into the house. Like you would your child. If your child was and they're young and they're throwing a tantrum, or they, not to be crass, they need their butt wiped, or they need, whatever. That was how he became at times. And that was special too. So the life growth between my stoic rock of a father, who that part of his life I'll always cherish. The friend, the buddy, the guy you give fist bumps to, the guy who loved his family, loved his friends, loved his dog. That part of his life I'm going to cherish. Taking care of him, that part of his life I'm going to cherish. I'm blessed. And anyone that knew him, you're blessed too. We are all, I was talking to my nephew the other day, and talking about who we are. I'm not just Bill, and you're not just you. We are a combination of everyone that we've come in contact with throughout our lives. And, for a long time, for an instant minute, they form who you are and how you look at things and how you live your life. And dad's part of every one of you. And you're blessed, and we're all blessed for that. I love my dad. I miss my dad. I've missed my dad for years now. And yeah, I don't really know what else to say. I'm going to see him again. Thank you all. I appreciate you all coming. I appreciate your support, and just keep them in your hearts. He would help you out, try to help someone else out. All right, thank you.
at some point, what I say, you might hark back to what Bill said. We didn't coordinate, so just remember that. I wrote a few things down. Maybe I can get through it. I hope so. I'll start at one. Again, thank you all for coming. That was great, man. So I sat down to craft this, and what came to mind, but well, there I sat, all brokenhearted, trying to figure out what to say about that. I couldn't go the rest of the way. So, what memories did I want to mention? The lessons that Dad tried to teach me. There are so many. How do I describe what he meant? Excuse me. To me, to us. The memory that keeps coming to mind is actually a fairly recent one. A few years ago, Mom and Dad were visiting us up in South Bend. And so Dad and I, one night, I think it was probably shortly after Rowan was born. I don't think Winnie was born yet. And lo and behold, Dad and I decided to go to the local pub for a few hours. And so Mom and Yvonne stayed at home. And we were talking, having a good time. And it's kind of hard sometimes to get Dad to talk. But when he did, it was a treat, that's for sure. At one point, he mentioned, quite offhandedly that, if America didn't work out, they were going to continue on to Australia. And I kind of went home, and I mentioned that to Mom, and Mom was surprised because she didn't know that. She was unaware that there was that little tidbit. Obviously, it didn't work out because, well, we're all still here. But my thoughts then went to, what would our lives have been like had they gone on to Australia for whatever reason? Maybe they'd have come up with that money that they couldn't get before. I don't know. I expect that all in all, Mom, Dad, Ian, Andrew, Bill, and me would have all been pretty much the same people, except that maybe we'd have talked funny too. A little bit different, but still funny nonetheless. Most of the others in this room, though, and many that could not make it today, would certainly be much lesser people for not knowing Dad. They would not have had the privilege to know the man that we knew. The man that was about family, helping others, and being there for his family and friends. He won't be listed in a history book, I wouldn't think, but his impact will be recorded in the friends and family that he's influenced over the years. Big things or small, they were all important to Dad. I remember taking a trip to a home improvement store one time when we were on vacation in Jersey. Old Jersey, of course. But, right. We were on vacation because one of Mom's sisters had a piece of furniture that was broken. And Dad saw that and says, oh, well, that just can't be. So off we do. We traipse on off to the do-it-yourself store, and we find the parts, and we bring it back, and Dad fixes their little piece of furniture. It wasn't a major repair, but it was a repair nonetheless. Mom's sister seemed to think that it was a pretty big deal that he would take the time to do that while he's away on vacation. Dad, it was just something that needed to be done, so we did it. That's just who he was. And to think that it all started because, well, he won some money on the football pools. It must have been a significant amount back in the day. But even then, he still thought of others. He kind of splurged on himself, I guess, and bought himself a motorcycle. I think Ian and me kind of thanking for that a little bit. But then he used some of the money to help one of Mom's sisters buy a house. And then set aside the rest of the money so that Mom, Dad, and Ian could come to the United States and pursue that American dream. The rest, as they say, is history. Maybe it's his story, or more appropriate, maybe it's our story. He's been known by many names over the years. William Beresford MacLachlan, Bill, Scotty. Every now and then I refer to him as Super Dad. Kind of chuckled at that one. But in the end, he was my dad. The man that I've been blessed to know for my entire life. Till we meet again, Dad. I love you. Thank you.
He stole my speech. I'm not a singer, so I can't sing songs. I'm not a good storyteller. I can't tell a good joke. So I thought, what the heck am I gonna do? Just like Bill and Bruce said. I started by thinking, okay, I probably have to tell memories, maybe tell lessons that I learned from Mom. So I started to write them all down. Although I'm not a singer or a jokester, what I do think that I am is I plan. I don't get scared of things. When I got a call, on Sunday, I got in the car, 2 o'clock in the morning, started driving down 69. It broke me up. So I get to Scatterfield. I says, okay, put the game face on. You got to do it. I learned that from Dad. Don't be scared. You can go to any ball game. You can do anything that you put your mind to. Don't be scared about it. If you planned and prepared, then you'll do fine. So I thought I planned for this. You really can't prepare to do this. So I'll do my best. Thanks for coming too. I appreciate it. I don't remember, I tried to think of my first memory of Dad. It wasn't when I popped out of Mom. I don't know if he was in the room or not. So it was some point after January of '66. So I started thinking back at, what's my memories of being a young boy. And most of my memories included Mom and Dad, Ian, Bruce, and Bill, Rena and Danny, Ewan and Jim, Jim and Jeanette, Elaine, Karen, and Sandra. We did everything as a family. There was a picture up here of Jim and Dad playing cards. And Jim had that grin on his face, like he always looked at Dad. And I think, it's funny, I think Karen said, Jim was trying to figure out how to cheat at cards. Like an hour earlier, Bruce had said, oh, look at Dad. He's looking at cards, trying to figure out how to cheat in this game. But we did everything together. It seems like every holiday. I remember 4 o'clock in the morning, Ewan and Jim waking us boys up on Christmas morning. And I remember Dad and Mom coming home from dances at the Eagles and stuff. And it would be with their family. It would be with siblings. And I think that has stuck with me. I appreciate the family, even though it was small. I appreciate the times in the family that we have. Once I got a little bit older and started getting more involved in things, I played sports, played baseball and football and swam, and Dad started coaching baseball for some reason. He's from Scotland. He didn't know what first, second, third base was, I don't think. But I was young enough, and what he did know is that kids, no matter what they're doing, if they're playing a sport, if they're playing an instrument, they can have fun. So Dad stressed, even though he didn't know much about baseball, he stressed on us, have fun, and next year, if you want to come back out and play again, then I've done my job. I remember talking to Coach Brandon about that. He was Anderson's baseball coach. Years later, once I got into Babe Ruth age group, and Dad and Coach and I were talking, and Coach said the same thing. He says, when kids are young, they should be playing in their backyard. They should be playing out on the street. That's how they're going to formed this love of the game, and Dad really stressed that. So that's a memory that probably from my activities. Dad was always there. He was there at football games. He was there at swim meets. He was there at baseball games. Like Bruce said, he worked third shift. And he worked third shift 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. And then in the afternoons, he was with us. He was at some activity that we were doing. And if he wasn't doing that, he was out in the barn. And I said it wrong yesterday. He referred to it as piddle farting around, not just piddling. And I used to think Dad could fix anything. Yeah, maybe I still do, because he was always out in the barn working. And I think, but how many things ever got fixed? Maybe he was just out in the barn, acting like he was working. I don't know. And like Bruce or Bill said too, having to go get Dad up at 10 o'clock at night so he could go in for his third shift. I used to like it in the summertime because that was the only room in the whole house that had air conditioning. They had a window unit in the master bedroom, and we had fans in our windows that just made the bugs stick to the screens. That's so they had an air conditioner in the room, and they had the upstairs phone in their room. So I remember we used to get the real long cables for, I don't know how many younger people were in here, but before cell phones, you had to have a rotary phone. So we had a long cable that would stretch from Mom and Dad's room into either one of the two bedrooms upstairs, just so we could have privacy to be able to talk to somebody. But you'd have to be so stealthy sneaking in to get the phone because Dad might be asleep. So that's another memory that I had as growing up. Dad wasn't I'd probably lose this. Dad wasn't, in my mind, a strict disciplinarian. Now, maybe it's because I had Ian as an older brother that Dad was just worn out. That might have been the case. You can elaborate on some of that later. But what he did do is he had family meetings. Every now and then, Dad would call a family meeting. And it was usually when us boys weren't treating Mom right. So Dad would get frustrated. He wasn't a vocal guy. But we knew, oh no, a family meeting tonight. What did we do? We didn't use pledge, or we didn't wash the dishes. We had a dishwasher, but I don't even think he used a dishwasher. Those were pretty tense moments. It seems there was a time, and Marcy's going to say I'm telling this story wrong, but it's the truth. And I don't know if this was a family meeting time or not, but Mom had made a meal, and Dad always wanted us to acknowledge and be appreciative of things that Mom did. She made a meal that included Brussels sprouts, and everybody had to eat a Brussels sprout. So I think I sat at the table like a chipmunk with a cold Brussels sprout, like a chaw tobacco in my mouth for about an hour and a half. And I think I waited Dad out. I think I got that. I remember when I first started dating Marcy, and she was very intimidated and scared to go over to the house to see Mom and Dad. Not because she was scared of them. She just thought that she would not be able to understand them and that she would miss something. So she said, oh no, we can't go over there. Oh no, you know, pray for me, please, so that I understand everything. Oh, the last memory, and some of the guys that were here today will remember this from last year. It's a memory and a lesson that Dad taught me when, I don't know which order to say it. I'll put it this way first. Last year, me and a couple of my friends, we go out before Christmas every year, and we do a guy shopping day, where we the females think that we're out shopping, but last year we went to Fountain Square. So we weren't doing a whole lot of shopping. Well, these buddies of mine, we were there with a couple of young college kids. They met up with us. We didn't know who they were. They were talking about how fast they were and, they were good athletes and all this. Well, my buddies say, this kid over here is pretty fast. I'll bet you he can beat you in a 40-yard dash. And I'm thinking, you gotta be kidding me. So before I know it, there's $100 on the table for my buddies, and they looked at me and I said, I'm not pitching it. And then shortly thereafter, I'm on Fountain Square running a 40-yard dash in December against some 22-year-old college football player. So after about 10 yards, they knew that they'd thrown their money away. But the lesson, I didn't say anything to them, but I thought, this is why I didn't pitch in my money. When I was a teenager, Dad challenged me to a race in the backyard, across the backyard. I don't know if you remember that. And I said, come on, old man. There's no way you're going to beat me. Well, the same as I knew there was no way I was going to touch this kid last December, because, and that's why I didn't pitch in any money. So I've got a lot of other memories, but the four things that Dad taught me, and that all carry on. Bruce mentioned some, Bill mentioned some. Families first. Right after mom. That's what Dad instilled. We're a family, we're close, but mom is first. We try to put you first. I know that Dad put you first. The second one, take responsibility for you. You're responsible for yourself. You're responsible for your actions. You're responsible for what you do. We'll be there. I'll be there to support you. I'll be there to help you out. But the responsibility lies with you for yourself. He used to say, what's your last name? I say MacLachlan. I think he's told all of us that. He said, right. If MacLachlan, how many MacLachlans do you think there are around here? Well, not very many. Right. So if that name ever ends up in the newspaper, everybody's going to know it's our family. So make sure if it's in there that it's something good. So I learned that from Dad. Provide for those that you love. Dad provided everything. Mom could go overseas to see her family, and Dad never questioned, as far as I know. Mom could go wherever she wanted to. Dad provided for each of us. He never bought us cars, I don't think, but we had access to his cars. Bruce had access to his cars. I think he totaled a couple of them, didn't you? You're already done, so now. And last, be available for those that need help and help them. Dad didn't do things with the expectation of getting something in return. He just did it. He would do it for neighbors. He'd do it for neighbors out on No Name Road. He'd do it for people that were older than him. He'd do it for people that were younger. It didn't matter. If someone needed help, then Dad was available to do it. And all it would take would be to ask him. So this part I might have to read. Those are my takeaways from Dad. And he taught me a lot. I've got a lot more memories. And there's two more people that taught me a lot. the last 2 years. Bill has a thread of compassion and emotion in him that's missing in me. I can try to show emotion. I'm compassionate. It just doesn't come across. My kids said it's because my voice, and sometimes my voice is intimidating. I think Jim has. It's not me. But Bill was there, and he spoke a little bit about it this morning. He was there for Mom and for Dad. And I might have been able to do it, but I didn't have to. Thanks, Bill. You stepped up. For me. And the second person is Mom. I read a book a few years ago. This a guy, he played for Dean Smith basketball at North Carolina. And his family went through a similar situation that Mom and Dad had recently. The book, I think, was called My Father, My Friend. And his family situation was opposite. It was the mother that was going through the problems. And the father's the one that was there every day, like Mom was there every day. And the son wrote in his book that he was talking to his dad one day, and he said, "Dad, how can you do what you do for Mom? She's not even there." And he said that his dad fired back, "Because I love her. Because I love her." So Dad loved you, Mom. And you loved him for 63 years. Last week, 2 weeks ago, they were married. And that's the best gift that you could have given them. Thanks. So that's about all I have, except I'm going to introduce the oldest male of the MacLachlan family. And I'll say it before he says it, because I know he will. The best looking too. Ian.
Well, I know why they saved me for last, because they've said everything. They're making it very, very tough on me. I also, from me and from my family, I want to thank you for coming. I swore I wasn't going to do this. I consider myself a very lucky person. Having known that, reason being, there's a lot of people who do not know who their real dad is. And for that, I'm very thankful for the parents that we have. My dad was, unbeknownst to me, as I was growing up, he was a lifelong teacher. every day, he was teaching me and my brothers. The only thing was, we were too young and maybe too stupid to realize it. But the only thing that I'm upset with him at, or about, is he would teach us everything except for the one thing that we all wanted to know. I mean, every one of us wanted to know. How did him and Hubba cheat so well at euchre? He would never tell us how. But he also prepared me. He prepared me for life. And I can't thank him enough. As my brother stated, I cannot ever remember Dad missing a ball game. Any event that was a part of our life. He never missed anything that I know of. What better dad can you have than one who was always there for you? I think the one thing, or one of the things that I take from knowing my dad is, and it was not just my dad. It was the MacLachlan sense of humor. The MacLachlans do have, at times, a pretty good sense of humor. And the older ones, my dad, Uncle Jim, my Aunt Rena, they have great senses of humor. I think it's been mellowed out as it goes down the line, but still, I thank my dad for that. Also my mom, because there is, on the Cleworth side, there is a bit of sense of humor there also. So that's kind of like a perfect storm. When you get the Cleworth and the MacLachlan humors together. Well, that's good. I also want to thank my family, my brothers, especially Bill and then Andrew. These last few years have been very tough on Mom. And unfortunately, Bruce and I, we live out of town. And we have got two great brothers in Bill and in Andrew who really helped out a lot. It put a bit of an ease to my mind knowing that they were here. So, Bill, thank you. Andrew. I've got quite a few things written down, but I think I am like a lot of other people that I consider myself lucky, and I am so glad that I knew my dad. It was a great damn life. He made our life great.
Some incredible words, a tribute and memories. And a lot of love going on in the family. What about you? Anybody have a story you want to share? You don't have to come up here, just right where you are. Any quick memory you want to share? Yeah.
I don't have a lot of memories to share, and this will be short. But I grew up in a very small family, having just one sister, and I always wished that I could belong to a bigger family. And I always growing up wished that I could have had a big brother. I just thought a big brother would be someone really neat who would look after you, look out for you. And my Jim was very blessed that he was the best big brother anyone could ever have. And they had their times like all brothers when they did it or visited one another. But they also, I think, were buddies. They did things together. They went to bowling together. They helped each other out all the time. And one of the best things they had with each other was they'd sit down and they'd talk about things back in Scotland. They'd talk about people and places and names of people, and they'd get into quite big discussions about who was right and who was wrong. And it got pretty entertaining. So I'm just grateful that Jim had for a big brother. And as time went on, and I was living here too, I looked on Bill as my big brother. He was a good big brother, and couldn't have had better. He was the big brother that I'd always wished for when I was younger. And I loved Bill, and I will miss him.
Thank you. Go ahead.
My name is Lorraine Keys. I'm the Alzheimer's support group here in Anderson. And I just want to commend this family for what they've done. That was quite a journey. And sometimes we don't know as bystanders as we sit back and see what is happening with Alzheimer's. But you did a great job. I commend you.
Yes.
So now you know why you had such a long goodbye. And that's what Alzheimer's is. Sometimes we're saying goodbye many times.
I don't think all together. I wasn't gonna say anything because I'm emotional. I have a hard time saying things, but my first memory of granddad. I say remember. Mom and dad were gone, and one of our cousins is babies. We ran to the downstairs bathroom and somehow knocked the sink off the wall. The water started spraying everywhere. The first person we called was Grandma, because we knew he would be there for us. We were just scared to call Dad. We knew Granddad would be the one. So then you think over, figure out what the problem was. Granddad went to Lowe's, got the supplies, and walked in the front door and handed me the receipt and said, "Here, this one's on you." And as shy as I was, that was so, I didn't know how to handle it. It was so awkward, and I was humiliated thinking, do I really have to pay for this? That and another memory is, as shy as I was as a little girl, he would always, at any wedding, get me out on the dance floor and dance. And in the last couple of years, every other Tuesday night, they would fix dinner. And me and the kids would go over and have dinner every Tuesday night. And he loved our kids more than anything. And like Bill and I were talking today, the last time we were together, he didn't know who all of us were. He could have cared less, that you were just another person in the room. But he knew the kids. And he knew his dog. And those were the times that I'll always remember. Like Ian said, he never missed anything. He was at volleyball games. He was at Christmas programs. You could always look out and do to support you and love you. And Oliver's middle name was MacLachlan, so he'll always remember the great man that Granddad was. And just the love that he had for everybody.
Thank you.
I'd like to share one of the memories that I have. So, when we were at me and Dad's house, we were playing cards, like, 4 to 5 cards or everything, and Granddad, he won, I think, so we totally know how he cheated.
Anyone else? Share these stories. Continue to keep these stories going. You guys have an incredible legacy that's been handed to you. Keep it going. Keep it alive. As we talked yesterday, I spent some time at Daphne's house and we were around the table. And the stories just kept going. We laughed and we cried and the stories came. I heard about the house that he built and it took a year, and I heard how he could fix anything. In theory, out in the barn, that's what he was doing. He really was fixing things. I heard that he always made quick decisions. They turned out to be good, like moving to the U.S. or choosing to ask you to marry him. Very quick decisions. I heard about his bowling in the factory league, and I heard about his involvement at the soccer team or the soccer program at the Y. And I heard about Andrew playing baseball and the coaching when he really didn't know anything about baseball. He just knew that the kids should have fun. I heard about his biggest hobby of any hobby, and that was his family. It wasn't just a hobby, it was a passion that he had. I heard about how they moved to where he had the barn, and he had the chair, and the workshop, and the music. And he would play those Patsy Cline and the old country music songs and the Scottish tunes and all of those things, just as a reminder, really loud because his hearing was gone. I heard about his accordion, and he played the accordion, and took accordion lessons. Who would have thought? I heard about the tool collection because he's a pack rat. I mean, part of that is the era he grew up in. Part of that is being a tradesperson. As tradespeople, that's what I'm a carpenter by trade. I get that. And I have Stanley knives and tape measures, and I'm sure he's got all the electrical tools and multiple sets of them. And that's what we do. We collect those things. I heard about his love for Westerns on TV, and anytime there was a soccer game or football game on TV, he would find that. I heard about that dry sense of humor, especially when he would poke a hole in the bottom of an egg and suck the egg out and put the shell back in the carton, so that the next person to get the eggs out would have a surprise. But yeah, true story. It did it to your mom, right? Before you were married, he did that. Yeah, that was quite a surprise. Some of the opportunities to travel, as he because he was the chairman for the skilled trades at GM or at Guy, he was able to do some traveling, and Daphne got to go with him. So they've been to Niagara Falls and Vegas and New Orleans and out to visit the kids and the grandkids, not necessarily holiday travel or vacations, but always to a destination or with purpose. I heard how selfless he was. And it wasn't like he was being the martyr. He just was truly selfless. And he didn't mind being second and putting other people first. He had a great life. Bill had a great life. And you guys, you gave him so much love. Not just caregiving love, but all the time you were growing up, just being his family. You gave him love. Great life. The last few years have been extremely difficult. Alzheimer's progressed. He went into a nursing facility, and about that same time, COVID came on. And Bill contracted COVID right after he went in. And it's horrible what has happened and what happened in nursing homes with not being able to visit those who were there and going to the window. And it breaks my heart, the picture that's out there of him holding the sign up that says, "I can't wait to see you." It just breaks my heart. And visiting at the window, and we did the same thing. And it's so tough. And I'm so glad you found out about the Essential Caregiver Program, Daphne, where you could learn that and you could take those courses and be in there with him. And so it gave you the pass to do that. And I'm so thankful for both of you that you did that. You talked about the great grandkids that he knew and recognized and the dog he responded to. We don't know why certain things trigger, but that brought him joy. Thank you all for bringing him joy. Bill was tired. His body was tired. And this past Sunday, Bill took his final breath shortly after midnight. Took his final breath here on earth, and he stepped into eternity. We ask why sometimes. It doesn't matter how old people are or if they're sick. Why did they have to go? Why couldn't they still be here? To even ask that question presupposes that there's a purpose. And in order for there to be any kind of a purpose associated with death, there has to be purpose in life. Or else it would just be non sequitur. It wouldn't make any sense. See, some people think that life is just an accident, that there was sometime in the past, there was protoplasm and energy, and they got together and there was a big bang, and planets hurled out here and there, and stars, all of that, and millions of years later, life somehow evolved, and then we crawled out of the swamp and became human. Some people believe that, and if that's the case, I suppose it's possible. If that's the case, then nothing really matters, because we're all here by chance. And you don't matter, and I don't matter, and Bill didn't even matter, but I know that he did. And the only way that's possible is if we're here on purpose. And that's what the Bible says. And I happen to believe that we were created with a purpose and for a purpose. David talks about that in the Psalms also. And I think Bill found his purpose. His purpose was to love and to serve. To love and to serve. And he loved fiercely. He loved his family, his extended family, his friends, people who were around him. And he served. And I heard story after story about how he served and how he helped people and how he was always there to help people. So he found his purpose. So he had meaning and purpose in life. And so why then we have to go, what's his meaning and purpose in that? And that's just to go back to the one who created him, to be back with the Creator. I believe that in my heart of hearts. I believe that's why and where we're there. Now, some people think that death is the end, that there isn't anything else that once we're gone, we're gone. And if everything is by chance and by accident, that's probably true. I still don't think that's the case. So some people think we get to come around again and we keep coming around until we get it right and then go somewhere. But what I believe, what the Bible teaches is that we get one shot at this life. And then we step into eternity. Just like Bill did, we stepped into eternity. And it's either eternity together with God or away from God. And God has made the way for us to be sure we can be with Him. And because of what I know about Bill, I'm confident that he fell asleep here and woke up there. See, I remember when I was a kid, we used to go on car rides on Sunday afternoons. That's what we did back in the 60s. That was the thing. After church, we'd come home, we'd have dinner, we'd all pile in the car and go for a ride. And there were 6 of us kids at home at the same time. I was the youngest of 6. So we would get in the car and we'd fight over who got to sit in the way back seat of the station wagon. And we'd go for the ride, and I would always fall asleep. 5, 6 years old, I'd always fall asleep. Whether it was the conversation or the fresh air or what it was, I'd fall asleep in the car. And when we got home, I'd wake up and I'd be in the house. And I knew that I fell asleep in the car and that I woke up in the house. And I knew that I didn't walk there myself, but that Dad had carried me and took me into the house. That's what I think happened with Bill. Bill fell asleep there in the bed, and his heavenly Father picked him up and carried him to that new home. So he went to sleep here, and he woke up there. I think that's what that is. And I think that's such a beautiful thing to be able to celebrate as we remember Bill. He's got a new home. He's got a new body. He's got his memory, all of his faculties. He's laughing, he's smiling, he's able to walk without any problem at all. We can celebrate for him today. I ask for some special memories from the family. Daphne asked me to share this, something that they said together. It was real important for her. It says, I loved you then, I love you still. I always have and I always will. And that's her sentiment today. I asked, what do you think he would have said? If Bill were here today, what would he tell people? First of all, they said he would appreciate their thoughts. He appreciate your being here. And he would want you to know how much you meant to him. How much each one of you meant to him. Daphne, boys, grandkids, how much you meant to him. Friends, family members, how much you meant to him. He'd be honored by your presence here today. And he'd reiterate those 4 things that you shared earlier. Family first. Take responsibility for yourself. Provide for loved ones. Be available for anybody that needs help. And help them. So if we really want to honor his legacy as we leave here, those are the things to keep in mind. The big 4. Those are the things. Let's pledge to honor him. Before we close, I've been asked to tell you that there is going to be a small wake at Billy's house at 1818 East 8th Street, and you're welcome to come. Let me pray for you all today. God, again, this has been such an incredible celebration of love and of a life so well lived. I thank you for making it all possible. I thank you for receiving home one who has done so well, who has lived such a great life and lived and left such a great legacy. Again, my prayers for comfort for his family. We commend him into your hands, his spirit into your hands, knowing full well he's already been received into your presence. And we thank you for that. Hold us close. Hold this family close now as they continue to heal and as they continue to grieve and be comforted. I thank you for that. Again, we commit this time to you in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Yes, ma'am.